So if you make $250,000 a year, or if your household does with those combined incomes, you've been very focused on whether or not your taxes are going to change in the year ahead. A lot of talk about raising the rates on those making that income level. While we're debating this, we're talking about it's obviously going to have implications for the markets and for corporations' decisions on whether they offer dividends, whether they make different decisions with distributing some money back to their shareholders. We had UBS Wealth Management's Mike Ryan on the show to ask him, as a firm, what are they advising their high net worth clients? You'll be surprised.
I think what's likely to happen is that there's not going to be a political consensus on either extending all or some of the Bush tax cuts. So I think what we wind up going to see is we're going to kick the can down the road a bit. So what you're going to see is an extension of the Bush tax cuts for 1 or 2 years, and then Congress will take it up when we see the seating of the new 112th Congress. So this is more of a temporary issue. It's not a permanent extension of the Bush tax cuts, which is one of the things that certainly business leaders were looking for.
So what would you advise to clients then? I mean, it seems like we've been hearing so much about that rush towards December 31st, the expectation that taxes are going up. If that's not the case, what do you do now?
Well, I think what we're going to see is, unfortunately, we're still going to have this uncertainty about the tax code, because even if we get a 1 or 2 year extension, I think a 1 year is more likely, this doesn't resolve the issues about the ultimate change in the tax code. So it will help in the short term in that we're not going to see the immediate pushback to the Clinton-era taxes. But in the longer term, we're still faced with this uncertainty about what the tax code will look like 2, 3, or 5 years from now. Interesting,
because Larry Fink was on this show just yesterday, and he said, we're going to wait to decide what we're going to do with dividends or share buybacks because we're not sure what's happening on the tax front. You think there's very little equity support or dollar support out of a new face on Congress?
Well, again, I would also say that, you know, normally when we get these midterm elections, they're often course corrections. You know, normally in a presidential election, especially if it's a popular president, you tend to see fairly long coattails, and there's an ushering in of the new party. Midterm elections are all about restoring the balance. So normally financial markets do pretty well in that environment. What's a little bit different this time around, Margaret, is that when you come out of the midterm elections, there's usually this fiscal push you get, the ramping up of spending heading into the presidential election, which I don't think we're going to get this time around. We're not going to get the same kind of fiscal stimulus that has carried markets in the past.
You don't think gridlock is good in this case? You're forecasting a Republican House, a Democratic Senate. On a global basis, you do see protectionism as a worry here.
Well, I'll take an issue with that. I think gridlock is good. What I think is not good is dysfunction. Gridlock is when we have that split and there's an even divide. Dysfunction is when they can't get things done. Like, for example, if they're unable to get through the Bush tax cuts, the extension of them, because this ideological split was in two parties.
And it sounds like that's what you're expecting.
Well, again, I think we're going to continue to see this partisan bickering between the two parties.
So the bottom line from Mike, watch for the House to go Republican, Senate not so sure. So we'll see. And he's betting on a 1 to 2 year extension of those Bush tax cuts as debate continues. Meantime, we want to bring you some of our more interesting video of the day. Take a look at this. 134 tons of marijuana set fire to by the Mexican military. We've been talking so much about the war on drugs in Mexico, issues with the spillover of violence or not over the U.S. border. Look at what the Mexican military did to take on one of the drug cartels down there. More than $300 million worth of products burned. Watch InBiz What's at Stake tomorrow, because we're going to look at what the battle for Capitol Hill may mean for the U.S.'s place in the global economy.